friends, this is Michal.Towber. Welcome back to my channel. This week I wanted to do a different kind of video, basically because I've been traveling a lot in the past month and I'm tired and I don't want to do a reaction video because I'm kind of bored of those. I know people really enjoy those, but sometimes I need to do something that feeds my soul a little bit, so I will get back to that content. But this week I really just wanted to talk about my trips that I took. 3 weeks ago, I visited my best friend and main musical collaborator, AR, in Virginia, and we played a jazz gig while I was there. So I'm gonna put a card with one of the songs that we performed so that you could check that out if you want to hear it. Last week, I visited Sydney, Australia, because my husband was doing some professional development stuff. He's an organizational psychologist, and at the University of Sydney, they had a really big conference, so he was out there for that, and then also exploring some other professional opportunities. And so I decided to tag along because when am I ever going to be in Australia otherwise? So I just wanted to talk about that trip mostly. And I did perform when I was there. I was there from Sunday until Saturday. And on Monday night, the night after I got in, there was an open mic at the Hard Rock Cafe and I performed 5 original songs there. And so I'm going to link to those as well if you want to check those out. So that's the way that I'm kind of justifying making this video, because it is tangentially musically related. But I also just thought that it might be fun for those of you that like me as a person to hear me talk about something that I was excited about. And if you are just here for the music content, then you probably want to skip this video and come back next week. But if you want to hear about my trip to Sydney, then stay tuned. And perhaps in the future, you want to go to Sydney, and so I can give you some tips, because I really feel like I got a lot out of the trip and that I took the best possible advantage of my 6 days there. I saw a lot and experienced a lot of really cool stuff. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video, and I'll include some pictures and videos that I took while I was there. I left on Friday, actually, and it takes a really long time to get to Sydney. It's 20 hours flight time, give or take. So first we flew to Los Angeles, which is about a 5-hour flight. And then we had a 1.5-hour layover. And that was really stressful because there were like really high winds in Newark when we flew out of New Jersey. And so our flight was delayed. And that turned out to be a good thing because our Uber driver missed the terminal like 3 times. And so we probably wouldn't have made the original flight time. But it also was very stressful because then our connection flight was very close to when we were supposed to land. And they actually ended up holding the flight for us because there were like 15 people on our plane that were continuing on to Sydney. And so I guess they do like an economic calculation and they decided that it would be less expensive for them to hold the flight rather than like put everybody up in hotels and reschedule them or whatever. But we had to like rush to get to the second flight, and then that was a 20-hour flight. And I actually slept on that one because it was a night flight, so it wasn't that bad. But still, when we got out on the other side, my knees really hurt and my back was really hurting. And I'm a pretty small person, so generally flying is not that difficult for me, but it was just so many hours. So I think like the changes in altitude and just like being sitting in a tiny little airline seat for that many hours really took a toll on my body, and I felt pretty achy. And then when we got there, there was like crazy rain happening. It was basically like monsoon conditions. And it was very fortuitous in the sense that Australia has been suffering these crazy fires. And this helped to put them out. And it also helped to clear the air of smoke, which is a concern that we had before we went. We didn't have any problems with air quality at all. but it also was raining really, really, really hard when we arrived. So when I got out of the shuttle from the airport, I opened my umbrella and it basically like exploded and disintegrated in like 1 second. It's like a monsoon. My umbrella got ripped to shreds in 2 seconds. And I was really worried that the rest of the week was going to be like that because, you know, if it's like drizzling a little bit, I don't mind walking around in that. But if it's like monsoon conditions and like super windy, I thought that we weren't going to be able to do any sightseeing. But that wasn't the case. The weather actually was perfect after that. There were some little showers here and there, but it didn't interfere with sightseeing at all. So that was great. And then, you know, Sunday was like recovery day. We didn't really do anything that day. And then Monday night, I went to this open mic at the Hard Rock Cafe in Darling Harbour. And anybody who's a musician that is planning on going to Sydney, this is definitely an open mic that you should go to. It was amazing. And the guy who hosts it, Angelos, is really, really friendly. He immediately came over and introduced himself to like everyone that was there and made sure that we had everything that we needed in terms of backline. There was even a drum kit there, which is unusual at open mics. And normally there's like a 3-song limit, but he let me play 5 songs, and he was even gonna let me go on later in the night and do a second set, but at that time jet lag kind of caught up with me, so I decided to decline. But I had a really, really nice time, and the audience was very, very receptive and supportive, and there were a few other people there who were extremely talented as well. So it was overall a really, really great experience. Definitely recommend.
If I possess an immortal soul and God wills that we shall be together, then I'll wait for you. I will pass through.
The next day, actually I think it was the same day, earlier in the day, I went to Taronga Zoo and I got to see some of the wildlife that is characteristic of Australia. I did see some kangaroos, and I will say that I had this conception in my mind of kangaroos as being these like fluffy, cuddly creatures from like Disney or whatever. Like, I think my conception of what a kangaroo would look like came from Winnie the Pooh. So when I actually saw kangaroos, they looked extremely alien and freaky to me. They are enormous and muscular and basically hairless, and they just look like these like naked, disproportionate humans, basically. And they, you know, whenever you see a kangaroo in like a movie or a nature film or whatever, they're hopping, and so they look kind of graceful. But these were walking around, and so they have their like tiny little T-Rex arms and then these gigantic, long, muscular back legs. And so their gait is like really awkward and very alien-like. So I was freaked out by kangaroos. And then I also saw a Tasmanian Devil, and those basically look like giant rats, and their population is being decimated by this like weird facial tumor cancer that's very aggressive and contagious. So when they bite each other, it goes from one to the next, and it's totally wiped out the population, like 80% of them. So now they have all these breeding programs where they're trying to like rehabilitate them and reintroduce them into the wild again. And the Tasmanian Devil freaked me out so much. And I know this is probably gonna be an unpopular opinion, but I was like, can we just like let the giant cancer rat go? Like, maybe it's time that we just allow them to die. I mean, maybe they've like outlived their usefulness in the food chain. But you know, I guess they deserve to live as much as anything else, but they kind of were horrifying. And then I did see koalas there as well, but I didn't get to see them close up, and they were sleeping because of the monsoon conditions. A lot of trees came down and a lot of the zoo was closed off. But I had a nice experience there. I would definitely recommend. And one of the nice things about that as well is you get to ride the funicular up to the top of the zoo. So you get like that little ride, and there's like opportunity to really get kind of the lay of the land and see these nice vistas as you're going up the side of the mountain. And then I also took a ferry to Manly Island and walked along the coast and saw the beaches there. One thing that was really cool about that is they build these public swimming pools next to the ocean, and a lot of this surf is like very, very strong, so you are advised not to swim, but you can be in the pool right next to the ocean and you can feel the sea spray and the waves kind of crashing over you. So it's this nice blend of like integrating the wildness of the environment and the more like domesticated swimming pool, but it's not like indoors and like totally safe, you know, like you get to kind of experience the natural waves and the natural world and a little bit of that excitement being right next to the ocean, excuse me. So that was really cool. And then I also went to Bondi Beach and walked from Bondi to Coogee. And there was a cemetery up on a cliff in between those two towns. And one of my weird eccentricities is that I love walking around cemeteries. I just find it like very, very peaceful. And I think it's really interesting reading the headstones and seeing what people write about the dead and how the headstones look in different periods of time. So I really enjoyed walking around the cemetery. So I got to see both of those really famous beaches. And if you don't know, Australia is famous for its beach culture. They're like a very sun worshiping culture, which is not me. I am very pale and I have a history of skin cancer in my family, and I've had problems with my own skin. So I really try to stay out of the sun, generally speaking. But even though it was the summer and it was hot when I was there, it was also very overcast. And so that was really lucky for me. I didn't have to worry so much about getting a sunburn, and I of course was slathering on sunscreen and being extremely paranoid about it, so I was fine. I didn't get any sunburn. Then I also went to the Gallery of New South Wales, and that is a free museum, and the art there was amazing. And one of the highlights was that they had like a student show, and there was incredible art in it. Like this is like students that are in high school and college and art school running the gamut of ages, and everything was like really, really high quality. So that was amazing to see. And I will include some of the photos from that show so that you can see them. The one thing that I was disappointed about was that the Yuri Bana gallery was closed. They're doing renovations on it, and that's the Aboriginal art. So I didn't get to see really that much Aboriginal art. There were a few more modern pieces in the main collection, but I really would have liked to learn more about Aboriginal culture while I was there. And that's one like thing that I didn't see any of while I was there. I also went to the Aquarium and Wildlife Sydney, I think it's called, which is like another mini zoo that's by the Harbour. And so I got to see more wildlife. I got to see the cassowary, which is this crazy prehistoric bird. It's the third largest bird on Earth, and it's very dangerous. Apparently it has like a blade-like claw, and if you startle it or you like threaten its babies or whatever, it'll slash you with this knife-like claw. It's basically like a dinosaur, you know, like from Jurassic Park, the velociraptor with their claw. And it's this just like huge, crazy looking bird. It has a bright blue head with like red on it. And it's like enormous. And it's also very endangered. And it helps to kind of keep the rainforest alive as we know it. Without them, there would be significantly less diversity in the rainforest because they eat toxic plants and then they poop out the seeds around the rainforest, and they've co-evolved with these plants. So if they weren't spreading the seeds, the plants wouldn't be able to do it on their own. So they're actually very, very important for the ecosystem. And I had never heard of this bird, and it's like freaky and crazy and awesome. I also saw wallabies, which are like cuter, smaller, furrier kangaroos, kind of like what I thought kangaroos looked like. And I saw emus, and I got to pet one. So all in all, it was a very, very exciting, nice visit. I also saw some crazy spiders. There's like the huntsman spider, which apparently is very common in Australia and not poisonous, but they're enormous. So you might like move your bed away from the wall and see one and be totally freaked out. And they also have like the funnel web spider, which is the deadliest spider in the world. I got to see that. And there's like another spider that is kind of like their version of the black widow. So there's a lot of poisonous things, a lot of poisonous spiders and snakes and things in Australia. So definitely that would freak me out, but I didn't go into like the bush. So I wasn't ever in danger of being in close proximity with them. I was just like in the city. So the city I could deal with. I wouldn't want to like go out where there might be poisonous snakes. That would freak me out. I also went to the aquarium, and they had a lot of really cool stuff there. They had like a manatee type thing, and they had like rays and white nurse sharks and all this cool stuff. They had jellyfish, which is like my favorite thing in the world. I find them very relaxing. Oh, the other thing that I did that was really amazing is I walked across the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and you can walk across the whole thing, and you can actually climb on top of it. It takes about 3.5 hours. I did not do that because I didn't want to invest the time and the money since I was only there for like 6 days. But if I was there for longer, I definitely would try that. I'm totally a risk seeker when I know that it's safe. So I would definitely climb the bridge. But I did walk across it on the pedestrian walkway, and halfway across the bridge, there's a pylon that you can climb up. And I did that, and I found out some really funny, interesting historical facts. One of them is that the first owner of the pylon created a museum up there, and she bred white cats. And so whenever visitors would go up there, they could visit the cattery and like see these white cats. And there's pictures of them walking along the top of the bridge because, as you know, cats are not afraid of heights and they're very good climbers. So it makes sense that they would thrive in that environment where a lot of other animals wouldn't. And then another funny fact is that right before they cut the ribbon, when the bridge was finished, they were gonna give that honor to like a military personnel, but there was a paramilitary guy that felt like he was snubbed by not getting that honor. And so 5 minutes before, he rushed in and cut the ribbon. And so his name is De Groot, and he's become this figure in popular culture that's like an anti-hero that's very famous. So I thought that was pretty funny. And you get like these incredible sweeping views of like the opera house and everything from the top of this pylon. So that was very rewarding. I'm glad that I did that. And then I also, of course, visited the opera house and walked around. I did not go see an opera because I'm not like a huge opera buff and it was pretty expensive, but I still got to enjoy the architecture and walk around. I ate very, very well when I was there. The food was really good. And I did not try Vegemite, but I brought some home with me. I also have some kangaroo jerky and alligator jerky, which I haven't tried, but I'm looking forward to doing a little taste test of those bizarre foods. I walked a lot in the city. I was averaging about 20,000 steps a day. It's a very walkable city. There is very good public transportation as well. You can get on with a Opal card, and it's like a couple bucks to take the transportation, and you can actually swipe in with a credit card as well. And it's very clean, very reliable. They have a bus system, a train system, and a ferry system. And, you know, I think that you could really experience Sydney without spending a lot of money if you're willing to walk around. The weather was great, and you can experience a lot of things without paying. You know, like you can walk across the bridge for free, you can go to the art gallery for free, go to the opera house, you know, and have like a cup of coffee outside and not pay to go see an opera and still get to experience a lot of what the city has to offer. I definitely think it's a trip that you can take for not a lot of money, although the airfare obviously is the limiting factor. It's very expensive. So that was my experience. I had a really, really nice time. I would definitely recommend going there. And I think it's one of my favorite cities that I've ever visited. There was a lot of natural beauty, and I was kind of sad that I didn't bring my kids with me because I think they really would have enjoyed a lot of the activities, but obviously being on a plane for like 20 hours would have been really, really difficult with them, and it would have been a completely different experience. When I was coming back, I had a much worse time with the flights because on the way out there, it was a night flight, so I was able to sleep, but coming back, the 15-hour flight was in the daytime, and so I wasn't tired at all, and I didn't sleep at all. And then when I finally got to San Francisco for the second leg of my journey, I was very tired, but I ended up being squished in the corner next to a man who was actively dying. He actually introduced himself to me that way and told me that he was coming home to live with his brother because he's like very, very weak and was going to be dying proximately. And so that was like an extremely awkward situation that I didn't really know how to handle because I didn't want to like engage him around that topic because I felt like that was kind of like an awkward thing to talk about, but I also didn't want to be too bright and happy because I felt like that was inappropriate under the circumstances. And I was pinned in the corner by the window and I didn't feel comfortable asking him to get up because he was very weak and I didn't want him to fall. So that was like kind of a stressful flight for me. And I know that like a lot of that is just me and my discomfort with like mortality, and it's something that I should get over. But it definitely like made my second leg of my flight a little bit awkward and disturbing. But I did watch a lot of movies. I saw 7 movies, and you know, normally I don't ever watch movies because I just don't have the patience to sit for 2 to 3 hours. I like things in like short form. So the only time that I ever really watch movies is when I'm trapped on a plane. And since I had all of this time in the air, I watched, I think, 7 movies. So I'll probably do another video about the ones that I liked and which ones I didn't like, but I'll just say that I did see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was my favorite of the ones that I watched. And my least favorite was A Star is Born. I thought that the depiction of how the music industry works was completely unrealistic. So that was a little bit disappointing. And I know a lot of people really, really loved it. So I'm probably going to get some flack around that unpopular opinion. But, you know, having been in the music industry, it seemed a little bit ridiculous. I also watched Judy, the Judy Garland biopic, but I watched it without sound because at that time I didn't have headphones. And I know that like makes no sense since it's a movie that has a lot of music in it. And now I don't want to rewatch it because I don't want to just like sit through the whole thing again to hear the music. But it seemed really good with the subtitles. So anyway, that's my rundown. I hope that you enjoyed this video and getting to hear me talk about something that's not really music related. And if not, I will be back to more music related content next week. Until then, happy singing.